Good morning, Maryland. My name is Anthony Bynum. Let's introduce our guests for today's show. To my immediate right is Father Vincent Arisukwu, the Associate Pastor, Christ the King and St. Bernadette parishes. To his right is Pastor Michael Horrigan, who we refer to as Pastor Mike. He is the leader of Dayspring Presbyterian Church. To my left is Dr. Reverend Kenneth P Moore, who we refer to as Pastor Moore. He is the leader and minister of John Wesley United Methodist Church of Glen Burnie. So gentlemen, first of all, thank you so much for being here today. I really, really appreciate all of you.
Thank you.
So let's start off with perhaps some opening statements before we start with the questions. Father Vin, do you have an opening statement for us?
It feels great to be here, Anthony. Good to see you, and great to see you guys, and to have some conversations about our faith. Thank you.
And Pastor Moore, same question, opening statement rather.
It's indeed a pleasure to be here with you, my brothers, colleagues of the gospel. I'm reminded of the book of Psalm in the 133rd book, where the psalmist said, "Oh, how good it is when brothers can dwell together in unity." And indeed, in times such as this, it's good when we can come together, regardless of our denominations, and just chat and be a source of inspiration and strength for one another. Thank you.
And Pastor Mike.
Yes, first of all, thank you, Anthony, for the privilege of being here with you and my new brothers and friends I just met here a bit ago, and having some time to chat together, and looking forward to celebrating the things that we have in common.
Very good, very good. So what we're going to do is just kind of have some questions just to get the conversation started. So Pastor Moore, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about your childhood, about some of your interests, about some of your hobbies.
Anthony, that's an interesting question, because when I look back on my childhood, I have fond memories. It seems like the things that I did in my adolescence and my childhood are non-existent today. I have a grandchild who is my heart. I have two grandchildren, actually, and seeing them today and the things that they use and they do as far as technology, they were absent in my childhood. But I'm a military-dependent child, the middle of 5 children, and had the opportunity to travel abroad and live extensively in other countries and experience different cultures and communities. And when I was a child, it was, I think, much simpler then. We just enjoyed playing outside, and we were outside all day. We enjoyed riding bicycles, and friendship was everything. Catching lightning bugs and pulling dandelions and making wishes when we blew them, eating fruits, and going to the corner store was something that was paramount. Sharing a bed with my brother. I thought that it was just something cool to do, but because of being in a military family and having 5 children, my father being an enlisted man, things were not that great economically, but we were rich in other ways. So when I look back on my childhood and having the experiences of growing up and experiencing different cultures and communities and having a real sense of being a part of something was great. When we lived abroad, we were all together. We were Americans. We were family. We were not focused on color or things of that nature, but it was about just enjoying one another. And then when we came back to the States was when I experienced the differences in the culture and the racism, not only in regards to Black and white, but within my own race and in other communities. So it's been a very enlightening experience and an enlightening journey, but one that I look back with very fond memories and foundational on who I am today.
Well, thank you for that. And Father Vin, can you tell us a little bit about your childhood?
I grew up in a remote village in Nigeria, southeast of Nigeria. And I grew up in a large family. I'm one of 9. My parents were typical business people. My mom and my dad would do any business at any season. So it happened. And growing up in a large family could be fun, was fun for me. It was also, sometimes we had little sibling fights, but then we were taught to be family. That is one thing we were taught. And in my village, the child of one parent is the child of another family. So it was community. So that community dimension of growing up, of encountering one another, informed my earlier development as a child. And I am the first son of the guys. So it's 5 girls, 4 boys, 3 girls, me, and then the rest of the kids. 3 boys followed me, and then 2 girls tied it up. And we were taught to be family in our manner of socialization, our manner of praying. My parents taught us to pray. Like, prayer was a part of what we did. We woke up, we prayed, and then we start the day, and then we ended up with prayer as well. So going to church was family. Going to the streams to fetch water was family. Going to the farm to work was family. Going to the market was family. Going to school was family. So everything was family and community. And that way we knew life. And I loved soccer. Like, soccer was my fun. I sent you some photos, right?
I saw them.
I would play soccer until my mom would come to drag me out from the field. Like, yeah. So, if not for the priesthood, I think I would have been a soccer player.
Wow.
Because I played a lot of it. And so, family is the center of how I knew life. And until I came out to the United States, it was family, church, and work and school. But, it was a village. And the village life is different from the city life. So where everybody knew everybody. You didn't have to know your next door neighbor. Go knock on the door of your neighbor. Are you not going to church today? Are you not going to school today? Are you not going to the market today? Right? Yeah, you dress up for school, and then you wait, and your mom will be from there, will call the next door. Hey, is your child not ready for school? And that was how we knew life. So anyway, we'll talk more about that. But that's where we are.
Well, Pastor Mike, at what point in your life did you believe that you had a religious calling?
Before I answer that, could I ask Father a question?
Of course.
So have you seen you know Ted Lasso? Are you familiar with the TV series about soccer with Ted Lasso? I don't think so. I have to talk to you about that later. Okay.
Sure.
Anthony, again, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course. Can you tell us at what point in your life did you believe that you had a calling for the religious life?
That's a good question, because the guys that I grew up with, when they found out that I was a pastor, I haven't seen them for a long time, they were like, their mouths just dropped, because it wasn't anything that I was particularly ever interested in. It wasn't until, I guess I was in my early 30s when we were at church one day at a congregational meeting of our church, and we were going over the budget, and I had a teenage son at the time, and there was, I think, $50 in the budget for youth ministry, and I made my first big error in the church. I raised my hand. I asked, what was that? What could anyone do with $50? And the pastor said, well, if you were interested in maybe being involved in youth ministry, maybe we could raise that budget. So my wife and I said, well, we can give that a shot. So we did, and I quickly realized that I wasn't prepared to lead these children spiritually. So I went and talked to my pastor about that, and he told me that there was a seminary in Baltimore that I could go to get more education. And I said, okay. So I did that, sort of just started taking some classes to better prepare myself to lead this youth ministry at Glen Burnie Evangelical Presbyterian Church, right in Glen Burnie still. And the more classes I started to take, the more I realized I'm really liking this. I'm really liking the deep study and learning more about theology. And next thing I know, Brad says to me, maybe you're being called to ministry. And I was like, no, I don't think so. But apparently I was. And so that was how the internal call that I received first. was through that mechanism, through actually just going to seminary and taking a few classes. Next thing I know, I'm a student.
We're going to be following up on that question a little later, okay? But thank you for hitting on that at this point. But Pastor Moore, how about yourself? At what point did you feel that this was a calling?
It was through a series of steps and experience. I was always raised in the church. My father was deeply involved in the church, in the Baptist church. My mother, she was equally involved, and she made sure that we went to Sunday school, and we prayed as well. Prayer was an integral part. My father would be in the church all the time, where there were dinners that were being done, or singing in the choir, or special events that were happening in the church. So it was always with my father. I traveled everywhere with my father. I was in the adult choir, singing in the adult choir. I served as an acolyte in our church, oftentimes in the black church. Fifth Sundays were the youth Sunday. And you wore black and white. You had to usher, you had to do this and that. And my father would always volunteer me to either read scripture or to pray or to do whatever. So I was always active and involved in the church. And as I grew in service, God kept on opening doors and giving opportunities in service. And I heard the voice of the Lord say, I need you to do more, but I was not sure if he was truly calling me to ministry. And I had some issues coming up because I was raised overseas primarily in my formative years, where there were certain educational things that I was lacking, where I had to be, because of Anne Arundel County then had vetting or tracking, so I was vetted in special education. And I was told that I would not be able to go to college. I was encouraged to go into the military or trade school or something of that nature. And I really believed in what the educators were saying, that they knew me better than myself. But my problem was I knew that God wanted something more of me. So the tension that was there was listening to educators that said that I didn't have the skill set to go to college, and hearing the voice of the Lord saying, but I need you to go. And being in the Methodist Church, that we'll get into later, it's very much structured in education, almost to the point you may not even be called, but if you have the education, sometimes they'll look at that, it seems. So long story short, I knew I needed to go to college, and the Lord opened doors each step of the way. My constant prayer was, Lord, if you are calling me, will you give me the tools that I can be successful and enter in through the process? And the Lord blessed and was able to get my undergraduate degree, went to seminary, received my master's and my doctorate degree. And each step along the way, my constant prayer was, Lord, if it's your will, then open the door. And the door opened and I passed through.
Amen.
Good.
So,
It's fantastic. Father Ben, tell us a little bit about the steps involved in the priesthood.
The steps involved in the priesthood. I think before I get into that proper, now you mentioned that the essence of this gathering is community, building community. And yesterday I was reading a study that was talking about the Gen Zs and that they don't trust anyone. They don't trust friends. They don't trust siblings. They don't trust God either. But I want to say this right away, that to be a priest or to be a minister for God is a great thing. And I want to communicate to our generational kids of today that you have to trust God. If you have to trust God and believe God to be either a priest or a pastor or a minister. For me, getting into the priesthood was inspired by my parents, my family. So it was like, oh, get in, become an altar server. So I went in, joined the altar server, and then was going serving mass. And then it happened that there was an announcement.
What is this called now?
Altar server. That's
Altar
the
server.
altar server. We call it mass servers. That's the Mass is the Blessed Eucharist. Okay. So you have to have altar servers who will serve the priest while he is celebrating the Mass, help him do things on the altar. So I was about 10 years old when I was introduced to that, and it was fun. So from there, it was announced that there was an entrance examination into the seminary. So I took the entrance. We were about 5 of us. And then
Well, how old were you for that?
I was then 12 years.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes, I was 12 years old when I went into the minor seminary to start it's like going into the high school, but it was a dorm. Like you have to live in the school with other boys. It wasn't easy. It wasn't fun. But my dad and my mom had some disagreements then. My mom, in her emotionality, didn't want me to go because I was that little boy crying when I would go back to school. But that's it. Someday he would realize it and we would be the one asking him to come back. And but then we had 6 years of that. Then after the 6 years, you will go into the parish to serve. And then you will be trained also by the priest. Then after that, we had what is called the spiritual year. And you go into the spiritual year, it's more of introductory into the philosophy courses and then into the theology classes and all that, psychology and all that. Then after the 1 year, each of these years is followed by an assessment. So if you're found, if you qualify, then you go to the next stage. Then the philosophy, 4 years. Philosophy is like, we call it ancillary theology, is the auxiliary to theology. So you study 4 years of philosophy where you're exposed to all the radical thoughts, Socrates, Aristotle, Thomas Aquinas, Plato, René Descartes, and all of them, right? And then you see people who doubt the existence of God. And then you are exposed to reason in such a way that you know that this is the foundation of what you might believe or not believe. And then you go for another year of formation in the parish, then come back for 4 years of theology. So it's 4 years philosophy, service, 4 years of theology, and then at the end of the 4 years of theology, you go again for another year to work with the parish to learn the practical aspect of the work now. So it's at this point that you're either confirmed to be ordained a deacon, and then you spend another year as a deacon serving and learning the real things, the sacraments, celebrating the sacraments and all that. And then at the end of it, ordination of the priesthood. So it's a little long process, but I think it helps to equip you.
I had no idea that it started so early.
Yeah.
Pastor Mike, can you tell us about some of the steps in becoming a Presbyterian minister?
Sure. Mine is not nearly as complicated as Father Vin's. I was quite amazed at that. Wow. I think I mentioned this before. It starts with a sense of an internal call, believing that God has called you to the work of, we would call preaching, teaching, and administering the sacraments. Those are the 3 things that we really concern ourselves with at the early point of your work. And then after the sense of internal call is realized, then that call has to then be substantiated by the local church, and that is done through meeting with our board of elders in the local church. And they then say, yes, we too believe that God may be calling you to the ministry. And you're recommended then to the presbytery, which we'll get to how we're structured a little bit. But the presbytery, then you become what's under care of the presbytery. And then part of that under care process includes a very detailed internship, which would last maybe 2 or 3 years. And you're doing that while at the same time you're going to seminary. My seminary I was married at the time. I had 4 children, and I had I was working full time, so it took me 9 years to get my master's degree. So that process is going on all at the same time. And then when you finished your degree, your undercare process is over, your internship is completed, then you go through what we call ordination trials. And that's when you start meeting with a board that is part of our presbytery to evaluate you on all the things that you've, theology, church history, church government, the sacraments, all the things that we deal important. And then they then recommend to the presbytery that you are ready to be examined by the presbytery as a whole. And then after that, after you're examined by the committee, you go before the entire presbytery, and they then can examine you and do on all of those same things, and they can ask you anything about anything, and you're in front of, at that point, 50 or 60 other pastors, and it's quite an ordeal for example, I was asked to outline the book of John on the fly right now. So you have to do those sorts of things, and after you've completed that, we don't ordain you until you have a call to a particular church. So we just don't ordain men and just leave them ordained without a call to a particular church. And so then so that once the call to the church happens, then you're ordained to the work of that church, and that's where you are.
It's still complicated.
Different versions, you know.
Yeah.
So, first of all, thank you for that answer. Thank you for that. What we're going to do is we're going to move forward a little bit. You started to hit on church structure. So, with the remaining time, I'd like to stay on that point. Pastor Moore, if we could, tell us a little bit about the structure of the Methodist Church.
Well, the Methodist Church is structured, and we're guided by two books about the Book of Resolution. The Book of Resolutions, it has different stances and positions that the United Methodist Church, what our stance is, from everything to stopping criminalization of communities of color in the United States, to treatment and cure of animals. Anything you can think of, there is a resolution that will tell you the official stance of the United Methodist Church. The Book of Resolution is published, as well as the Book of Discipline that gives the polity and the order and the structure and the general ordinances and articles of the United Methodist Church. These books are established through a sense or source of ratification that takes place overall at our general conferences that are held. We have the annual conference, and we have also the local charge conferences. So when you're looking at the structure of the United Methodist Church, there are several levels of ministry. While there are not ranked structures or systems, we have local pastors, licensed local pastors, district superintendent hires. So there's varied levels of service. After you have your DS hires, local pastors, student pastors, then you have your probationary members, which are seminarians, and they've either completed seminary and they are doing their 3-year probationary period or longer, depending on how they are progressing, and then they can become permanent full members as elders in the church, which requires that after the completion of 3 years of service as a probationary member, you're ordained as an elder in full membership in the church. After you are ordained, you are guaranteed an appointment. In elders, we are ordained to word, order, and service and sacrament. So as an elder, you can go and preach and preside at any service and have full functionality as a minister of the gospel worldwide. As a probationary member, you only can do service at the parish that you are assigned to, as well as with a local pastor. So local pastors, they have their credentialing only for the time of service that they are in. When I had said as far as the hierarchy or the structure of the United Methodist Church, we have elders, then we have a council of bishops or district superintendents. They are elders. They are part of the episcopacy cabinet. They are the appointing authority for pastors in an annual conference. So the district superintendents, in consultation with the bishop, who is the Episcopal leader, will determine where a pastor is going to serve after there's forms that are filled out by the local church, as well as a dream sheet, if you want to say, by the pastor as to what their gifts and graces are, and they try to match with the local congregations what their needs are, and then they will appoint a pastor to a pastorate. So you have the elder, then amongst the elders, the superintendents serve as regional guides or overseers over a region. I'm in the Annapolis district of the Baltimore-Washington Conference. So in the Baltimore-Washington Conference with the Annapolis district, my district superintendent is over 66 churches. She works at the cabinet level with the bishop who is seated in Fulton in Columbia. She is the Episcopal leader for the Baltimore-Washington Conference. She is an elder, but she has been elected as a bishop by the Northeast jurisdiction that is over the Baltimore-Washington Conference. At the Northeast jurisdiction conference, that's where bishops, each jurisdiction elects bishops from the churches within those annual conferences. She is over, for our conference, 700 and something churches that are in the Baltimore-Washington Conference, annual conference. That includes some areas of West Virginia. The bishop is an elder, but she is functioning where she is to preside and set appointment and preside over the annual conference. So then over the bishops, there's a council of bishops where all the bishops worldwide are a part of that in the United Methodist Church, and they come up with policy or polity that will affect the governance of or positions of the United Methodist Church. But the annual conferences convene, and we present resolutions that goes to Northeast jurisdiction for ratification, and then the General Conference makes it, codifies it, and makes it into church law.
So
Wow.
It's much.
we're going to have one additional question, and this is going to fall to you, Father Ben. Can you also talk to us about church structure?
The structure of the Catholic Church is simpler than your own structure, kind of, because the Pope is the head of the Catholic Church, and followed by the cardinals. And it's the cardinals that elect the Pope in what is called a conclave. So below the cardinal, you have the bishops. Within the bishops, you can also have archbishops. We have the Pope who is in Rome and who is also the bishop. He's a bishop, the Bishop of Rome. Mm-hmm. Okay, then the cardinals work directly with the Pope, and then the bishops work in dioceses. Archbishops work in archdioceses, okay? And then you have the priests who work in the parishes, posted by the bishops. So we call it the hierarchy. And then you have deacons who either become priests if they are in the transitory diaconate phase, or they're permanent deacons. And then that's the order. And then you have the laity. So it's the Pope, cardinals, archbishops, bishops, priests, deacons, and the laity.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, it's been fantastic. We had great conversation. As when we do these types of things, there's all kinds of things we want to cover, but we do have certain time constraints. But I do think we had a open, honest discussion. We peeled back that onion a little bit on what I believe is probably the most important vocation we have in our society. So Pastor Moore, Father Ben, Pastor Mike, I want to thank you all so much for your time. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice meeting you.
Mr. Moore, good
Nice
to
to
see
see
you.
you.
Nice meeting you. Good to see you.
Likewise, yes. Good to see you.